they say that you should be the person, when you're an adult, you should be the person that you needed as a kid. And it seems that that's the direction that you've gone. You said, like, when, you know, you have these people that are intelligent, but they're scattered, they're ADHD, they don't know where to put it, to focus it. And now you've created something to help focus that. It's not only on the PR, but also on the actual learning of how to focus the mind.
Yeah. So we've got a new course coming out, actually, which will help with that too, specifically aimed at ADHD people, and also a new book that I'm working on called How to Forget. It's kind of a follow-up to Brain Hacker. For that very reason. Yeah, I think that if people are trying to figure out, like, if you're entrepreneurial minded, right? So you want to run a business, you want to have a side gig, whatever it is, I strongly recommend you get started. Because even if 1 in 100 people becomes a successful entrepreneur, you employ so many other people, and that's where everybody else gets their job. So if you're feeling that passion, I think you have a duty to try to pursue it. And most people won't understand. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to figure out, what am I going to work on? Where is essentially what you're trying to do is find a problem that you're trying to solve. So what problem am I going to solve? The thing that makes the most sense is to solve one of your own problems, with the understanding that there's likely people out there that'll have the same problem if you figure out a solution for it. I wasn't focusing and I wasn't learning that fast, so I figured that out and became one of the world's fastest learners, if that's a title. And then I could sell that and make a very good living. Thank you very much. Doing, helping other people crack the egg that I had already figured out how to crack. And that way you're growing. I think that's one of the most powerful things about media today. People just want to make content on social media. They just want to get the likes and the views and everything. But unless you're providing some sort of value, unless you're actually helping someone be better, then what are you doing? And it's really hard to talk to somebody about something that you don't know anything about. I could not talk to a professional skier about how to be a better skier, right? But if you're ADD and you have learning challenges and you're trying to go to college right now, I could be the conversation that could change your life. If you're an author or a business and you want to get publicity and you want to get exposure and you want to get out of that rat race, then yeah, we could change that. And again, it was all because that's what I did for myself. So I think that's the smart thing to do, and it's also the ethical thing. If you're pretending or proposing that you're an expert at something, it better damn well be something that you've done yourself. I think we're past the point now in society where you can just be an academic expert, and what I mean by academic is like book learned, right? You've learned by reading other people's accounts.
The theory is there.
Yeah, but it doesn't have nearly as much credibility as if it's your actual account. If you've actually done it, and I think it's because you don't have skin in the game. You haven't put in the risk. And so people don't trust you as much.
Indeed. There's also the small things, like the small things, like if you're learning how to rebuild an engine, you can watch a YouTube video on it. But if you've rebuilt 10 different engines, you know that you got to keep these bolts and these bolts separate.
Yeah.
Because they're very similar and you will mix them up. And if you put these in the wrong thing, then the whole engine will blow up.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience. Absolutely.
A little bit. But yeah, having that, the personal experience in that, and also the skin in the game, but the personal experience really shows up when not only do you show the facts and the theory of it, but also the human process of it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of principles. And I think that when you see something, a phenomenon that repeats itself over and over, there's an underlying principle that you can take advantage of. And that with the understanding that no principle is universal. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule, right? But if you see something happen often enough, then it works. So like with the PR firm, what I noticed was that not just me, but others that were trying to get publicity, incredibly credentialed people were not getting the slightest bit of attention in the media. And some people that didn't have great credentials were getting features, in major publications. So I was like, what's going on? And I realized that, the incentives behind journalists are completely different. They're not, it's not a job application where, a bunch of people apply for the job of being featured in an article, and then, you select the best one. That's not how media works. Media shines a spotlight on whatever is new and interesting. So the people who are getting publicity, they were the ones who were coming up with new and interesting angles on existing stories, or they were able to say, hey, there's a trend going on here and there. So that's what we do. That's how I got, about 2,500 media interviews. Instead of, because I'll tell you, when I first got my Guinness record, my first one and the second one, the second one I was prepared for it because it happened the same. I got tons of publicity. I went from nobody to, like, I was on Fox and Friends at 21. I was doing all sorts of stuff, and I had no idea. Within about a week, though, all the publicity was gone. It was done, and I couldn't, for the life of me, get back on the air. And I thought, well, you just wanted to interview me just a little while ago about my opinion on the brain and everything and my journey. And they were like, well, yeah, but that's when the Guinness record was news, and now it's not news. Go do something else cool, right? So here I thought, Guinness record is like, the sky's going to open up and money's going to fall out, and business is going to be fine. And it turns out I had to stay relevant. So what I did was I decided to look for every possible story that could fit my niche. So if a politician forgot something, kids returning back to school, remembering making a memorable first date. I got a bunch of articles on Match.com with that. So anything that tied into memory, which you can tie a lot into, by the way,
Right.
That's what I pitched the media. And it's a really winning formula. If you tell them, hey, this trend is happening with millennials or with Gen Z or with Gen Alpha, and it's affecting them, in the job market, or it's affecting the housing, or it's affecting their mental health or something, then they're very interested in that because they know it'll get clicks. What we do now with Fair Communications, same thing I did for myself, is a new client comes through the door and we do some research on what's getting the clicks. If somebody comes in and they're a mental health expert, we say, well, who is having the biggest mental health problems and why, and who's solving it, and is funding being cut from something. We find that stories, usually a demographic and a trend. We find the story, then we pitch the story and say, hey, Mr. Journalist, I know that you are super busy and you have, you're doing the jobs of 3 people would have been hired to do, 10 years ago. So you're super stressed. You're also living in the internet age, so you're worried about fact checking. Well, here's a story that we already fact check. Here's all the references for this story. Here's the Google data to show that it's actually getting traffic. And by the way, here's our client who's been trained to speak on camera about this story, and they'd be happy to do an interview with you. And lo and behold, that's why we get double the publicity of our nearest competitors, apples to apples comparisons of the data published by publicists in the author world, at least. So that's the real powerful formula, is you make it easy for the journalist to do the story, and then the authors are surprised when we get double the results of a publicist.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that goes back to your previous statement of, like, knowing something about it, about the structure of it before you jump into it. And then you show them the structure. It's already there. You're just adding something new with it.
Yeah, and there's real truth to be said to the phrase that if you help someone solve the problem that they're working on, then they'll help you. So if you make it financially advantageous to you to solve other people's problems, you'll get very wealthy.